One of the other things that we've been discussing throughout the course of this trial is the defendant's body language and what during the testimony he did it affect the jury and the decision that they might reach. He was obviously nervous and seemed during cross-examination to have trouble keeping his story straight. So I now would like to welcome our very special guest, forensic psychiatrist and trial expert, Carole Lieberman. Carole, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yes, I want to walk through some of the behaviors and body language of the defendant, because as we watched him, let me start with this. The prosecution in closing argument made very, very clear. Listen, on the rebuttal, he did not look at the jury ever. He sat in this witness chair, and the entire time he testified, he looked at his attorney, talking about killing his wife. He admits he shot, she died, killing his wife, a 25-year-old. He never looked at the jury. Start with that. What does that mean to you, if anything?
Well, that is a telltale sign that someone is lying, that they, if someone looks you in the eye and tells you a story, it is more likely true if he can't even look at the jury. But, there was something else that was interesting. He would oftentimes, or at least sometimes, look to the right. It seemed like he was trying to connect with someone in the courtroom and for some reassurance. And then he would sometimes, smile to himself, like, do you believe they're asking me this or saying that? So that was somewhat interesting, too. He would, look slyly to another side.
Well, I think I missed that. Remind me, if you would, Carole. I know that they say if a person looks up to their left when they're talking, it's truth or lie, and up to the right. A, is that an old wives' tale? Is it even true? And B, what is that adage?
Well, it can be, I won't say it's an old wives' tale, but, you have to take so much else into consideration. It's not really looking up or right. Now, of course, I'm self-conscious. Which way am I looking? No, you have to take a lot of things into consideration. But what I thought was the most interesting thing in terms of body language was, and he did this pretty much throughout, was that he had this position, and I think this very much, that it was very off-putting to the jury. He had this position where he had his head back, and he had his chin jutted out, and his mouth turned down. And it's kind of a stance, a typical stance that you'll see for like a little kid who's a bully. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Like as if he was saying, come on, you want to fight? Come get me. You have a problem with me? Prove it. You think I'm a killer? Prove it. Like a tough guy kind of thing when he's really not feeling tough inside.
Well, I love that description, because I'm watching him on our screen as you're describing that, and that does, I think, summarize what his body language is like. The other thing that we know, and of course it's not body language, but through the police interrogation as well as during his testimony in live court, he really did blame everybody else. He would blame Brandy. He blamed the 6-year-old during the interrogation, and I just also noticed that. I never felt like there was any responsibility on himself or any remorse by himself. Let's do this together, because the interrogation also stood out to me, because, Carole, I felt like his body language, I'm not going to tell you what I think yet. I want to hear you as the expert and what you can tell us. Let's watch a little bit of that interrogation together.
Sure.
She said that all of her life she had that problem. She was evicted, and she was going to see if she could see him.
Sure.
But she didn't reveal to me. It's not like I'm going to meet up with somebody,
Yeah, sure.
So that's about it with that. But our relationship-wise, awesome. Awesome relationship. We can talk to each other, which is very rare.
All right, let's set the stage. This was a voluntary statement. He agreed to talk to the police after she had been shot and was killed, and his version of facts at that time was, I assume she accidentally shot herself. Now break down some of that body language, if you would, for us, please.
Well, the most striking part is that he had his arms crossed in front of him, and that's a protective kind of measure. Like, you're not going to get through to me. You're not going to find out my lie. And that was part of what he did in the courtroom as well, as far as not so much the arms crossed. You couldn't really see his arms for a lot of it. He was behind the podium, but he had this feeling like this idea that you're not going to he was chuckling sometimes. He had this feeling, again, pretending to himself. He had this feeling that he's much smarter than everybody in the courtroom, and he's going to, make his case, and nobody's going to get him. And of course, that's a psychological defense, meaning that really deep down he was terrified. But it was like, I'm going to tell you a story, and okay, it wasn't the same story I told you before, but you're going to believe me because I'm saying so.
And I do wonder, we don't know whether his attorneys advised him not to testify, if they said don't, and he said, I'm going to because I want to tell my story. We're not privy to that information, and in fact, it's attorney-client protected. Let's listen now to a soundbite of what he was doing on the stand when he was testifying.
I had walked forward to her, trying to disarm her, and, well, I had grabbed my gun, the one that was in the box, okay?
Mechanic?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, there was some stuttering by the defendant as he was testifying, and he also, to me, appeared to be rather defensive.
Yes, absolutely. And I think maybe this stuttering affected him from the time he was a little kid. And I think maybe that was where the this stance that I was talking about, this I dare you, he probably was bullied as a kid. But, it's the more of a lie something is, the more he seems to want to prove that, no, this isn't true. He gets more emphatic. But it's interesting because he was so disconnected from his wife. In all of his testimony, it was like he was talking about, I don't know, someone who he didn't even know. He didn't remember the date of their wedding. He said we were married for 1 or 2 years. He never used her name or very sparingly. It was like she didn't exist, like she was plastic.
And to that point, there's another piece of testimony that I want to listen to when he recounted details on the stand. Let's listen.
Well, I woke up and I went to the living room to retrieve my pants because I was thinking about him taking a shower. Then I pretty much was in the bathroom, took off my pants, getting ready to step into the shower, and I heard her say boo, which is the nickname that she uses for me. So I go out there, and she had a weapon in her hand. She said that I was not her husband and I was plastic.
All right, tell me about, so I noticed his head was moving quite a lot. I'm a hand talker, so we all have our different things that we do when we talk. But what's your analysis breakdown of watching him with that piece of testimony and about these details that he says occurred?
Well, he swallowed hard. I noticed that, like gulp. He felt like the prosecutor was closing in on him, asking for these details, which was another interesting part, where he said, when he starts to try to describe more about what happened when he went into the bedroom, and he said, I wish I had a diagram. Well, you would think that he would have, if the attorney would have thought that a diagram would be helpful, then the attorney would have had that created, as an exhibit. So it was, but he didn't want to describe all the details because they didn't make any sense.
Right, great point. One more question I have for you, Carole, as a forensic psychiatrist. Are all of these behaviors and body language potentially affected, in your opinion, by the fact that we know he was taking meth for days before this incident?
Well, do you mean the body language in the court?
Well, not in court. That's a great point. In the interrogation video and the way he's acting, can this be caused by a lot of methamphetamine use in a lifetime?
Well, he said he stopped using it for 2 days. It's a little difficult, but what really is, the meth is all part of his personality disorder. I mean, this is someone who has had problems since he was very young, whether he's narcissistic, histrionic. A witness said that he was wearing a purple tie in court. It was hard for me to see on the television, but if that was true, defendants usually are told by their attorneys not to wear purple ties. I mean, not to wear something that's paints them as odd.
Right. Oh, Carole, you've been invaluable. Thank you so much as a forensic psychiatrist, Carole Lieberman, sharing your expertise with us today on Court TV Live. And as we await a verdict in the Johansen murder trial, we are going to take a look now.